Okay, all right. This is Lee McInnes. I am with the History Department at Auburn University. I am on the phone with Mr. Billy U. Allen. We are conducting an oral history interview for the NAACP of Lee County as part of an oral history project. Mr. Allen, how are you doing this morning?
I'm fine, Mr. McGinnis. How are you, sir?
I'm good, thank you. And again, thank you very much for doing this interview. You are aware that this interview is being recorded, and you're okay with that.
That's okay with me. Yes, it is.
Okay, all right. And I have sent you a copy of the release form previously. You're not here personally to sign off on it, but I can walk through any questions you have. Do you have any questions about the release form?
Well, I have it right here before me, and if you don't mind, we can kind of just go over it.
Okay.
I see that you have to sign it also, so I can fill it out now. It won't take but a second, and I can fax it back to you today.
All right. So the release form is just a basic standard interview release from the university, and it says that it has a place for you to identify yourself. I'll put my name and the institution up at the top, and then it has your name and address. It has the place of the interview, which will be over the phone, and the date of interview. Today is the 20th of October, and it is 10:09 a.m. It says that I understand this interview and any photographs, tape recordings, or video recordings are part of a scholarly research by the individual, organization, and institution named above. And I give permission for the following, and you check all that apply. And again, if you have any issues with any of these, please let me know. It may be used for educational and research purposes, may include your name, may be included in school publications or exhibits, may be included in another educational nonprofit publication or exhibit, may be used but do not include my, if you want us to hold your name, please let me know and we can adjust for that. And it may be deposited in a local, state, or regional archive. Okay? And if there's any restrictions you want to place on that, please let me know. Is there anything there we need to talk about in more detail for you?
I think I understand, and I will complete it and send it back to you today.
Okay, great.
What is your fax number?
I don't have a fax number, and I don't know that there's one in the department even. So, is there any possibility you could scan it and email it back to me?
I can scan it and email it back to you. What's the email? Just email it back to your
email it back to me.
Address that I have.
Yeah,
I sure will.
Just email it back to me personally, and I'll upload it into the directory where we keep it on the files.
Thank you. I will do that.
Okay. All right, Mr. Allen. Let me start off. And again, one of the things about this that we excuse me, that sort of the artificiality of these things is. We've talked a couple of times. We met at an NAACP when we met when we were having a conversation over at the Darden House about a week ago, and we had some conversations. But in order to make sure that everything is on record with this oral history project, we're gonna discuss some things we already have just to make sure we get it on record. So if I ask you a question you think I should already know the answer to, I apologize for that, but we just have to make sure we get everything on the recording so it's saved for posterity. Okay, Mr. Allen, where are you from originally?
I'm from Opelika, Alabama, which is approximately 7 miles from Auburn, Alabama, and Auburn University.
Okay. Do you mind if I ask when you were born?
I was born March the 15th, 1954.
So that would have meant you would have started to school in 1960, give or take a little bit.
Elementary school, yes, but I did attend, I guess you would call it like a preschool at one time, but it wasn't the official Head Start back then. It was just a little preschool that I attended in Opelika.
Okay. So you would have been in the Opelika school system when it went through desegregation.
That is true, and you're correct. I would have started school like 1960. I graduated high school in 1972, so that's roughly 12 years. So, yes, I started like 1960, first grade. And during that time in Opelika, the schools were desegregated. That's correct.
So, I've talked to some other people, and they said the schools generally desegregated around 1966. They began to desegregate. That would have put you in about, I guess, 6th or 7th grade. So, what was it like being part of that historic process?
I'm not certain if that's correct, Mr. McGinnis.
Okay.
I think desegregation actually started in Opelika around 1968 when I was in 8th grade, around 7th, 8th grade, somewhere in there.
Okay.
We can research that and make sure that we have the facts in the proper order.
No.
Because I'm not certain if 1968 is correct.
So one of the things, Mr. Allen, one of the things about oral history is, especially when you're talking about events that happened almost 50, 60 years ago, is we're not necessarily looking for exact dates like you would find if you went digging through the archives, but we're just more interested in your memories of what it was. So the dates aren't important nearly as much as what your experiences were. So what was it like going through? How did your first class desegregate? I mean, were you sent to another school? Were white children, white students brought into your school? How did that work?
Back in 1968, roughly, I remember freedom of choice. They had freedom of choice. You can go to the black school or you can go to the white school. And in the 8th grade, I chose to go to 7th or 8th, and I'm thinking 8th grade, I chose to go to Opelika Junior High School. And it was very few of us that went over there. I would say maybe 20 to 30 people that chose to go to Opelika Junior High School. And we were very isolated. And I had one particular incident where I took a drink out of the water fountain, and the individual behind me refused to drink after I had a drink of water out of that fountain, saying that they didn't like the idea that I had taken a drink out of the water fountain there in the school, and that was like a junior high school for only maybe a couple of months before I transferred back to Darden High School in 8th grade because I broke my leg playing football. And again, that might have been the 7th grade. I get it mixed up. I'm thinking, as I think about it, it was the 7th grade when I broke my leg. So that was 7th grade when I went over to Opelika Junior High School. But go ahead. I'm sorry.
So, why did you breaking your leg in football require you to go back to your old school?
Well, being in a hostile environment, I felt, and my parents felt, that me being, I guess you would say, having a challenge, getting around with crutches and a cast on my leg would make it even more difficult for me to navigate everything in that school, and that's physically, mentally, and school wise, as far as getting my homework and everything, and extracurricular things. I was inhibited by the crutches and the cast, which would be for a few months, So we decided to go back to a more friendly environment, which would be the black school.
Yeah. Now, you may be the first person I've ever talked to that helped integrate a white school and then went back to a black school. Since there was freedom of choice, theoretically, white students would have been able to go to Darden without any question. When you got back to Darden after that couple of months, were there any white students in Darden, or was it still pretty much all black?
No, it was all black to my recollection.
Okay.
To my memory is that was all black. Again, let me correct myself. I think that was the 7th grade. And back then you had Carver Elementary that went 1st through 7th. And then you had Dart High that went 8th through 12th, the black school. And you had Jeter Elementary that went 1st through 7th. So I'm correcting myself. It was
Okay.
the seventh grade that I went to Opelika Junior High School. It was the seventh grade when I broke my leg playing football. It was the seventh grade that I went back to Carver Elementary in the seventh grade.
Okay. Now, did you go to Darden High School or did you go
Yes,
to
I
Auburn
did.
High School?
Yes, I did. I went to Darden High School from the 8th and ninth grade, and then I went back to Opelika High School in the 10th grade. And in the 10th grade, there was still freedom of choice, if my memory serves me correctly. And within the next 2 years, they totally integrated the schools. But they had what they call a Southside campus of Opelika High School, which was Darden High School. And a lot of kids that didn't want to go to college went there, if I remember correctly, because they got certain training towards occupational jobs that they require college education, whereas a lot of students that went to Opelika High School had aspirations to go to college. They had more to offer there, if I remember correctly.
And it's what you're telling me is fine. Your perceptions and memories are again everything we need for this. So that is great. So from the time you went initially, you thought in seventh grade, you were there for a couple of months. You went back into Opelika, the white schools, let's say, in 10th grade. Did you feel a difference, or did you see a difference in the attitude of the students and the administrators toward you when you went back?
Yes, integration had increased. There were more black students at Opelika High School then, and there were more black teachers and a few black administrators there. Therefore, the environment had changed from my seventh grade year to my 10th grade year. And as far as when I was going to school before integration started in the all black schools, we got secondhand books and that type of thing. We got used books that the white students of the white schools had discarded and gone to newer editions, and we got the old editions to study from. But that's one of the reasons too I wanted to go to the white schools.
Okay. And what year did you graduate from high school?
I graduated in 1972 from Opelika High School. May 1972, Opelika High School.
Did you go to college immediately after high school, or did you take some time, or what did you do after graduation?
Yes, I went to Tennessee State University in Nashville for 2 years. And after my 2 year of going to school at Tennessee State, I went to Auburn University. I transferred to Auburn University. But my first 2 years of college education was at Tennessee State University in Nashville, Tennessee.
So you that's an interesting path, and I feel like I absolutely have to ask you about it. So you graduated from high school, excuse me, and you went to a historically black university,
Yes.
which is a perfectly valid in one would almost expect at that time a customary path. But then you transferred to Auburn University, which is a university we both have in common. As we've discussed, I started Auburn University in 1980, a couple of years after you graduated. Where you're going back into a, much like your when you transferred from, to Opelika Junior High School, you're transferring back into you could almost say an entirely white university. What made you make that decision?
Well, I grew up in Opelika, and all my life I heard of Auburn University. On the radio every morning, WJHO, they played the fight song, War Eagle. And they talked about War Eagle, Auburn University all the time. And Auburn University was a very it was economically, socially, any way you want to look at it, Auburn University was a prominent in Lee County and also the state, but particularly in Opelika and Auburn. Therefore, I heard of Auburn all my life, and I thought about going to school there. I even had a business law teacher at Opelika High School that said, I should try to go to Auburn. Therefore, what I did, Miss Tatum, that was Miss Tatum, Julia Tatum, I think her name was Julia Tatum. She asked me about going to Auburn, and also Miss Moore. I can't. She was my math teacher. I can't recall Miss Moore's first name, but they're very instrumental in kind of leading me to go to Auburn University. So what I did, I applied to 4 schools after I graduated high school. I applied to Auburn University. I applied to University of Alabama. I applied to Morehouse College in Atlanta, Georgia. And I applied to Tennessee State in Nashville, Tennessee. Of course, Auburn University and Alabama were predominantly white schools, the 2 top public schools in the state of Alabama. And as far as students and academically, I guess you would think and say, and what happened, Morehouse College accepted me, and they said that I could also play football because they saw I did play sports. I can go out for the team, football team, and that would help me with the cost of going to Morehouse. Morehouse is a private school and very expensive. My parents didn't have the funds or the financial ability to send me to Morehouse, so I would have to get loans and that type of thing, and student work study, and even play sport if necessary. And so I thought about Morehouse, but it just couldn't fit with my financial situation and family financial situation at that time. Tennessee State offered me everything that I needed to go to school, grants, loans, and everything, and welcomed me with open arms. And of course, Tennessee State and Morehouse are historically black college and universities. So Alabama, University of Alabama, they accepted me, but they said that I would have to take remedial courses for a year, which is essentially another year of high school. And I thought about going to University of Alabama and doing that, but I decided not to do it. But Auburn University did not accept me straight out of high school. They don't have remedial courses, and they did not accept me. So I chose to go to Tennessee State because of the financial package and everything that they did to make sure that I would be able to matriculate there and have a successful college career. So after 2 years at Tennessee State, I decided to come back to Auburn because of my roots in Auburn and Opelika and the things that kind of influenced me during my high school years, teachers and stuff saying that I should go there, and being a resident of Lee County.
Okay. What was it like transferring from a historically black university to Auburn in the mid 1970s or early 1970s?
I transferred to Auburn in September 1974. Again, 2 years after I had graduated from high school and gone to Tennessee State for 2 years. Just like the article that you sent me, and I'm trying to look at it, but it's very small because I had it printed off. But this is a 1985 article, and it said that, and I think it says in here that there was only like 450 black students there at that time. I'm not certain.
And just
I'm not
so
certain. But
and just so we get it on the record, we're talking about some articles I sent Mr. Allen concerning a lawsuit against the Alabama Committee on Higher Education from the 1985, where the state of Alabama and the Alabama Committee on Higher Education was sued for still basically continuing to run in the mid 1980s a segregated university system that had a two-tier structure that was supposedly still separate but equal. But as we know, that's not possible. Alabama, schools like Alabama State, Alabama A&M, Tuskegee were considered sufficient for black students that wanted to go to college, and the black student population at schools like Auburn University and University of Alabama was basically their contention was so small is to be non-existent. So just so we clarify that, and just to be clear as well, the Alabama Committee on Higher Education in the state of Alabama lost that suit, but Dr. James Martin, who was the president of Auburn University in the 1980s, was really sort of the face of the resistance to accepting that court order. So when you got to Auburn University, Mr. Allen, there was literally just a couple of hundred students in a student population of 15, 16,000.
yeah, go ahead.
How were and again, you would not have been the first black student on campus, but you would have been one of the few. How were black students being accepted on campus when you matriculated to Auburn there in 1974?
Okay, let me read a part of this article that you sent me,
Okay.
and it's from the Birmingham Post Herald, and it's dated. Again, I think this is 1985. I'm not sure, but it says here, black enrollment had increased 40% since then, and then I don't know what that means, but it said although the numbers are small, 650 black students compared to 461 in 1983. So 1983, you had 461 black students at Auburn University. And the next year, I guess, it went up 40% to 650 black students. Okay? Now, it says here with 18,500 students, Auburn is the largest university in the state. And that came out of this article that you sent me. So this is 1983, there were only 650. When I was there from 74 to 77, it was less than 300 black students there out of 17,000 students. And a lot of those less than 300 students were athletes, And to be quite honest with you, it was a very isolated situation and a lonely situation for black students during that time. And just like Dr. Keith Hebert stated in our meeting on about a week ago, is the black students had a section of the Haley Center right outside the bookstore where we had really our black student union, where we just hung out, socialized, had a friendly environment within the big white oasis of Auburn University. Now, at that time, it was racism, discrimination was kind of overt and in your face. Now, there were some liberal individuals there that made you feel welcome, but also, on the other hand, there were other individuals that made sure that you understood that you were not welcome there. So, Auburn has had a low percentage of black students for a long time. This is nothing new, but to answer your question more directly, it was a time where you had to have a lot of individual wherewithal to continue your education at Auburn. You have to be driven to do that, and to do also. It was a time where you had to make sure that you had a supporting system within that university, and that was other black students.
So you talk about the Black Student Union, just being an informal group.
That was informal.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, and I was going to stress that at that time that was an informal group of students that got together and met. And to be honest with you, I was at Auburn University from 1980 to 1983 and came back for graduate school after I got out of the Army. And I as soon as you said that, a memory, when you told me that the other day, a memory clicked in of that I hadn't thought of in literally decades, of coming out of Haley Center and going out onto the concourse and seeing, when we would see a large group of black students sort of gathered there on the concourse. And I just began to realize that was probably way more important to black students, having that place to gather and to get together and to talk to each other, than I probably could ever understand. So I appreciated that memory coming back after talking to you. And that part of my Auburn experience that had sort of slipped came back after talking to you. Now, did you get involved in any, you talk about an informal black student union, were you involved in any formal student activism during your time at Auburn?
Well, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, no, go ahead.
Yeah, yes, there was a Black Student Alliance. That might not be the official name, but we did have a Black Student Alliance, and I think that it was sanctioned by the university. And also, I did join Omega Psi Phi fraternity there at Auburn University. I joined Omega Psi Phi fraternity in March of 1975. But yes, to answer your question, I did get into some organizations that did do some things to improve the situation there at Auburn University for black students.
And do you remember what kind of things you got? What kind of issues you were dealing with the university, or?
Well, one of the things we dealt with was removing the Confederate flag there. That was one of the things that we dealt with. We petitioned for more black students. We petitioned for more black instructors, professors, and that type of thing. And we petitioned and asked for a better environment for black students there overall. So I guess you could say the Confederate flag removal, more black students, more black professors, and just a better environment for black students there in general.
Now, had prior to that, had you been involved in any sort of formal activism when you were either at Tennessee State or before you went to college, when you were still in the Opelika school system?
I did join the NAACP as a student, and I assisted in voter registration and integration of certain public facilities and that type of thing.
Okay, which leads us into our next topic, which was going to be when you joined the NAACP. So, you said you joined the NAACP as a student. When was that?
I'm thinking it was in my latter part of my high school years, and definitely in college I was a part. But I'm thinking it was maybe the last 2 years of my high school career, and I have to look at that, and as we go forward with our interview, and I know our interviews are not factual, but I like to deal with facts.
I appreciate that.
I'm gonna go back and find all the information, and I'm gonna make some corrections and adjustments as we go forward.
I appreciate that. But again, the purpose of this interview, so we don't go on for, again, some of the other students have talked about interviews that went on for 2.5, 3 hours. I would much rather have 3 1-hour interviews than try to have 1 3-hour interview, because having done that before, I know at the end everybody's exhausted and just wants to get through the material as quickly as possible. But I think, follow-up interviews in the future, I think, are way better than trying to get everything done all at once. And I'm more than happy to move forward with that. So you said that you were involved in some, as a student member of the NAACP, you were involved in some integration of public facilities. Do you remember what any of those were?
I think if you go back to the text message, we're going to keep this local because this is for the NAACP here in Opelika.
Yes, sir.
Opelika, Auburn area. Now, I sent you some places in Opelika that the NAACP of Lee County helped to integrate, and also had some activities involving employment and customer service practices at these particular places. And if you don't mind, you got better research facilities and mechanism than I do for being there at Auburn University. Some of those businesses that there were protests and also efforts to integrate as far as employment and get better customer service. It was Montgomery Fair, which was a department store, Elmore, Five and Dime, Woolworth, and others. If you have the time within whatever time period we continue these interviews to kind of look at those places, you might, and I'm gonna look too.
Yeah.
Find that those places did have protests, and they were recipients of protests from the NAACP in Lee County. And I think Hill's Corner Grocery, Ennis, there's a bunch of them that Ennis Grocery. We can look for articles, and I'm gonna look also about the protests that were directed at those entities.
So here's one of the reasons why we do oral history, and because I'll be honest with you, I've already looked. Excuse me. I looked before we started this project. I went through I started with 1964 when the state of Alabama was forced to lift their ban on the NAACP in the state of Alabama through the almost to 1980. I went through every I searched those articles I sent you were from newspaper.com, and it was for the 10 to 12 years that I looked at when a lot of these things that you're telling us about, that Mr. Lewis was telling us about, or Pastor Lewis was telling me about, that many of our interviews, events that they've talked about, they never appeared in the Auburn Opelika News. They didn't appear in any of the Birmingham, because Birmingham and Montgomery had their own problems at the time. They had enough news to post about the civil rights protest. They didn't need to go to Lee County to find more news to fill their papers. And I asked a councilman, can't remember his name right off the top of my head, the councilman from Opelika that we talked to at the very beginning of the semester, and I asked him, was the Auburn Opelika News, were they intentionally ignoring the local NAACP? And he said that was possible, but also Auburn Opelika News has never really been one for, they mostly just repackaged national news stories. That's been, and he didn't even know that they ever had a reporter that would have ever been assigned to cover it. So the protesting it, you listed 5 or 6 grocery stores here that were segregated, and as well as the Montgomery Fair and Woolworths and things like that. It seems to be very few records of when what went on back then. And I think that's why these oral history interviews are so important, because even though human memory isn't perfect, it is at least a record that nobody else has control over. So that, if Auburn Opelika News decided to intentionally not report on civil rights protests in Lee County, or if they just didn't report on activity in Lee County as much as they should have, either way, we still have great sources like you and all the other people that we've been talking to so far this semester. But let me get back to the topic at hand and stop moaning about my position as a historian. So you were engaged in activity with the NAACP in high school. Then you went to Tennessee State, and as we heard in our meeting the other day, and as you've already said, we're supposed to focus here locally. You came back to Lee County. Did you? Was there a formal, to your recollection, chapter or branch of NAACP at Auburn University, or was it everything done through the Black Student Alliance?
When I was at Auburn University, I don't remember a student chapter, although there was a Lee County branch of the NAACP during that time. Lee County Opelika branch. Presently, Auburn University does have a NAACP chapters, have a student chapter presently. And also, this chapter has been in operation for several years now. I don't know exactly when it was formed. I'm thinking it was probably in the 80s that it was formed. But to answer your question, during the time that I was at Auburn University, no, there was, to my memory, there was not an NAACP student chapter.
Okay. During your time as a student from, 74 to 77, were you engaged with the Lee County branch of NAACP, or did you focus mostly on your activities there on campus with the Black student organizations on campus?
On occasion, I would get involved with the Lee County branch of the NAACP, and I have some written history from some organizations that will vouch and certify what I'm saying, and at the right time, after I get some clearance, I will share that information with you.
Okay, well, we certainly saw that, we got to, at our meeting last week, that all the bureaucratic processes have to be followed. So I will wait for that. So you graduated in 1977. Did you stay here in Lee County, or did you pursue a career somewhere else?
I stayed here in Lee County for about a year, and then I moved to Atlanta, and I worked for the state of Georgia for over 30 years, and I retired about 12 years ago from the state of Georgia. And my degree was in accounting from Auburn, and I worked in reimbursement for Medicaid for the state of Georgia.
Okay.
And the way I got involved with the NAACP in Lee County is that I own some property there in Lee County, and I had some issue with the city of Opelika, and I went to certain individuals there in Opelika to try to get some assistance to work with the city of Opelika to resolve my problems with them. I talked to John Harris. He was ex-commissioner of Lee County. And I talked to Oscar Penn, which was a community leader. And I talked to Lindsey Biggerstaff. And Mr. Biggerstaff was the president of the Lee County Voters League at that time, trying to get some assistance to work with Opelika to get my problems resolved on the property that I have there. It's a small piece of property, but it's property. And I was able to go to the Lee County Voters League to ask for assistance. Mr. Biggerstaff allowed me to speak to them. And at that meeting, John Sockocles asked me to check with the leadership with the Lee County Voters League to see where they were to reactivate the branch there, because I also spoke with some individuals. They told me that the branch had been inactive for several years, and Mr. Sophocles asked that I see what I could do to get it started again. And what happened? We had meetings and we started a reactivation committee for the Lee County branch, and they elected me president. John Harris was treasurer, and Irene Dodell, which was the secretary. And after a year of soliciting and getting people to join, we had to have 100 members. We were able to get reactivated in July of 2020. We started the reactivation efforts in 2019, but we got our reactivation letter, approval letter, in July of 2020. I think it was July 25th of 2020.
So,
and I was elected the first president after reactivation of the Lee County branch, and I served from 2020 to 2022.
I'm just trying to keep as much of it, and I'm taking as many notes as I can. So, the thing that leaps out at me is you're not a Lee County resident. You live in Stone Mountain, Georgia. You haven't really lived in Lee County since the late 1970s. So you've been out of the county for almost, I guess, 30, 40 years. Why hadn't the NAACP branch in Lee County reactivated with local people? Why did it take a guy from Atlanta coming in with a problem to sort of light the fire and get the NAACP restarted 3 years ago?
I don't know the answer to that question. I think that question can be best answered by individuals in Opelika.
Okay.
And individuals that served as president before. I don't have a clear answer to that question.
Okay.
However, I can tell you this. I have deep roots in Opelika, in Auburn, Lee County. I graduated high school there. I graduated college there. I have many relatives there, many friends there. And the bylaws of the NAACP states that anyone could be a member of any branch. But to be an officer of that branch, you have to work there, have business there, or live there. And I do work in Lee County. I have I work there at a funeral home there. So I do work there. So I did meet all the qualifications and make sure that we follow all the rules and regulations and the bylaws of the NAACP for me to be an officer and to do what I did as far as reactivation of that branch.
Mr. Allen, if what I said came across as questioning your right or your any sort of implied any sort of malfeasance, let me apologize, because that's not at all what I intended. I was just kind of curious, as sometimes we see it's like the old story about the toad. If you throw a toad in a bucket of hot water, the toad is going to do everything he can to get out. But if you throw a toad in water and you just slowly raise the heat, he's never going to notice. It's just sometimes when we live in an environment, we get used to the environment and we accept the environment, without question. And then when somebody from outside comes in and sees it, they are aware of some things that can be done through their personal experiences that they've had outside of that particular location. And I wasn't trying to imply that anybody had done anything wrong or that anybody was, being particularly lazy. I was just wondering why it hadn't. If you came in and restarted it if there had been an opportunity for that to happen previously, and if there was, why that might not have happened.
I have no idea again, and you need to talk to those individuals
okay.
in that environment. However, let me say this: I did not take it as an offense,
okay,
malfeasance, or anything. I just wanted to be clear with you and make sure that I express what is accurate and what happened. And I would say this: I can't speak for a toad. I don't know how a toad react to anything. But the reason I decided to do that is I wanted to make sure that the branch of the NAACP get reactivated because it was needed and still is needed in Lee County, and that I have deep roots there and a lot of memories there, and I would love for Opelika, Auburn, and Lee County to be the best it possibly can for every citizen of those government units.
So you were president for 2 years after. I mean, certainly your biggest accomplishment as president would have been the reactivation of the branch, and that's something significant. But in the 2 years that you were president, what are some of the things you think you accomplished?
Well, we did several things while I was president, and I must say we, because I had an office of president that had individuals that had great skill sets, very educated, very talented, but we worked on things like redistricting. After the 2020 census, we tried to get more representation for minorities in Auburn, Opelika, and Lee County, and we worked on affordable housing. We worked on what we call the Carvajita Community Plan, which is a plan to bring the minority sections of Opelika more integrated into the overall city of Opelika. When I say integrated, I mean making sure that the infrastructure and other activity, events, and funding are similar in the Ward 1 and Ward 2, which is the Carvajita, as is in the rest of Opelika. We worked on the Miracle Rescue Plan. We worked with the Remembrance Project of Lee County. We worked with we reactivated the Auburn University NAACP student chapter. We worked with COVID. We did voter registration, education, and participation. We worked with the Auburn Streetscape, which is M.L. King Street in Auburn, which has been upgraded with infrastructure and beautification. We did several things. I can go on with some other things, but I don't want to belabor what we did. But we did several things, and actually, I'll send you some information on that.
Okay, and so, Mr. Allen, just from now on, I don't want to hear anything else about how your memory isn't clear, because you just rattled off 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 things just off the top of your head. There's no way you could ask me what I did yesterday and I could come up with 3. So your memory is not something we need to be talking about from here on in, because that was phenomenal. I was struggling just to keep up. So that is, I will tell you. What time are we at? We're at almost 11 o'clock, and I want to talk about some of the things that I want to sort of identify. I want to have another interview with you next week if we're going to be able to set that up. I would like to tell you what I would like to talk about, just sort of so you can start thinking about it. I would like to talk to you about, you graduated from Auburn University in 77. You lived here until 78. So from 78 until 2000, you were involved with the community. Like you said, you have relatives, you had businesses, you had business interests, you had property. I would just like to talk to you about in this next interview some of your recollections about what was going on in Lee County during that period of time that you thought could have benefited from an NAACP branch in Lee County if one had been active. And I would like to talk to you some more details. I want to look back and just look at some of these. I especially want to talk to you about the redistricting plan you talked about, and I want to talk to you about the Carver Jeter plan for integrating those neighborhoods into the city, and exactly what that means. Because we oftentimes, because I think that's a good example of what sort of two things that the NAACP does. I mean, clearly, ensuring free and fair elections in the United States is a very important mission of the NAACP. So that redistricting issue for after the 2020 census is really important. But also that Carver Jeter plan, just to make sure that neighborhoods are getting infrastructure, that they're getting funded. There's those nuts and bolts issues, that about, like I talked about the other day in the meeting, quality of life issues that don't make the headlines, that don't, cause, don't necessarily make it into the history books, like things like Brown v. Board of Education and a whole bunch of others. But those day-to-day things that make people's lives better, I think, that I've learned over this semester that the NAACP is involved in, that I would like to talk to you a little bit more about, because I think we need to make sure that those kind of issues get recorded as well. But I'd like to talk to you. So I'd like to talk to you about that, what you were seeing in Opelika, as an out-of-state resident, as somebody who was coming back from time to time, who was integrated into the community but wasn't living here. What you saw during those years. And then about the redistricting after the 2020 census and that Carver Jeter plan. And again, I would like to talk to you more about your recollections about when you were in high school, when you were talking about integrating some of the businesses like the department stores and the grocery stores in Opelika, if that's going to be okay with you.
Of course, Mr. McGinnis, I would love to speak on those things, but I do like to be prepared. I like to know what I'm talking about and be factual. I understand not the oral content. I understand all that, but if you could kind of recap those things you want to talk to me about, send them to me, and so we can be prepared for next Friday, a week from now. If that's good with you, we can, at the same time, we can have this interview continued. And go forward. But one other thing I'd like to talk to you about, and I sent this to you, Lee County branch of the NAACP versus the city of Opelika, where they changed the structure of the city wards and voting for council people and for mayor. Where if I have it memorized correctly, it was open at one time, and then they changed it to wards. I did send that verdict of that lawsuit to you and Dr. Aber a week ago. But I'd like to talk about that too.
I have it right here.
Significant.
I have it right here in front of me, and I will send you a list of questions, or at least some topics, some broad topics that we can talk about. That I absolutely agree. We will, because that falls squarely into that what I was talking about. What you saw as an as someone with interest in Opelika but wasn't residing in Opelika. What you saw in that period of time, from the time you graduated from Auburn to the time you became the president. So we will definitely discuss that, and we will definitely get your memories and your impressions and your involvement with all of that as well next Friday. And I
Thank
will.
you, sir.
I promise you, I will send you a list of topics. I won't send questions because I did a number of. I was an investigator for the Department of Defense for many years, and I tend not to write questions down. I just sort of have broad topics because if I just keep it to broad topics, that gives me the flexibility to change my questions as I go through, and to allow the interview to sort of run its natural course. So, but I will give you some topics that we're going to discuss, and some ideas about what some specific questions might be that I will ask you, and I will try to get you that early in the week, fairly quickly. So I will put that as a priority, because all my papers are due in for, and I don't have another due in for a couple of weeks, so I should be able to focus on making sure that I meet your expectations here, which I may have slipped up on a little bit this week, but I will definitely improve.
No problem. And I must tell you, Mr. McGinnis, I thank you 1,000 times over, and the Auburn University and Dr. Hebert for everything that you guys are doing. We truly appreciate it, and we look forward to future interviews and working further with you all to make sure that this history is recorded and it will be there for future generations.
I'm just so happy that I got to get involved in this, because the other big project I'm working on, which is going to be the core of my thesis, is my dad was in the Alabama National Guard when I was a kid. I have some vague memories of that. So what I'm doing is I'm going back and looking at the history of the National Guard from the time it was reformed after Reconstruction through the 1960s. And so many of the people that were involved in that, it's very hard to find any I'm for the earlier stuff, I'm obviously working on archival records, but even on the later stuff that happened with the use of the Alabama National Guard is just almost a pinata between George Wallace and John Kennedy in Lyndon Baines Johnson about how they treated the National Guard as a political tool. There's just very few people left to talk to about that. All the senior people that would have been involved. I did get to interview General Graham, who was the officer who told George Wallace he had to leave the schoolhouse door at the University of Alabama. I had a chance to interview him, but that was 25 years ago. He has passed. So I'm really thankful that, especially for the younger students, not just for me, but for these younger students, that they're actually getting a chance to talk to people that were involved in significant historic events, and that gives them a chance to learn and to experience that as well through you guys. And it's an honor talking to you. It was an honor talking to Pastor Lewis. It's been an honor to be involved in this project, and I really appreciate the fact that you all have agreed and been so caring and thoughtful and cooperative. And sometimes we stagger through these interviews. It's a learning process for us, and we appreciate your patience.
No problem. Thank you very much.
So I'm going to close out. I have to do this just to make sure. I have been talking. Again, it is the 20th of October. It is now 11:06, so for about the last hour, I have been talking to Mr. Billy U. Allen, former president of the NAACP branch in Lee County. Mr. Allen, you, again, let me confirm that you were aware that this interview was being recorded?
Yes, sir.
Okay, all right, and we will do a follow-up interview, and again, we'll go through, it'll basically be the same process. And I will call, and if it's okay with you, I will go ahead and schedule it for next Friday, the 27th at 11 a.m. if your time, if that's going to be okay with you.
That's okay with me, and I look forward to talking to you next week.
And I am putting it on tape so that I am held to it. I will get you an email on the topics we're going to be discussing in the next couple of days.
Okay, thank you very much.
All right, Mr. Allen, thank you for your time, and have a good weekend.
All right.
All right, bye-bye.